If you've been online lately, you've probably heard that running a business is super easy and anyone can do it. Well, that's complete nonsense. We're here to share with you the real world of entrepreneurship. Welcome to I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This.
Hello and welcome to I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This. I'm Rachael Wonderlin and I'm here with
Natalie DePaz. I'm Rachel's operations manager and doer of things.
Yes, at Dementia by Day. And today she's my co-host for our podcast. And with us we have Leah Steele calling in from the UK to talk about a whole lot of things, including income-based marketing and all that nonsense. Leah.
Hi, Leah.
How's it going?
It's good, thank you. It's later in the day here, so I'm feeling quite good. Tuesday's a good day, just to let you know.
Oh, good. Thank you for letting us know from the future.
Ooh, I was worried about that. My goodness.
Leah and I met while I was doing some of my comedy stuff on what is now the I Can't Hustle Any Harder Instagram. I was doing it as Chelsea Diamond, who is my parody business character. And I think you must have commented on something or messaged me, and then we just started talking.
Yeah, it was so long ago now, I can't even remember. I think I was commenting on some things, just because, yeah, pretty accurate, to be honest.
Oh, you two are internet friends.
We're internet friends.
I love that.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
The magic of the internet.
Yeah, it can be a magical place sometimes.
It can be a terrible place. It can be a magical
Yeah,
place.
it can also be a terrible place. That's true.
So Leah, you are a burnout coach, and you do a whole lot of things. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with what you do today.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I am an executive coach. So that's one of the reasons why I found Chelsea Diamond so funny, because it was so many of the people that I've come up with. So I'm an executive coach. I do training. I'm a specialist in issues around burnout, career sustainability, and also working with neurodiversity. Late diagnosed ADHD myself. So imagine where that came from. I've been doing this for nearly 9 years, which is the longest job that I've ever had by some stretch. And before that, I was a lawyer here in the UK. So I work with a lot of professionals and a lot of people who are doing incredible jobs that we need people to do, but maybe are struggling with it. So that's what I do now. And that's what I've been doing for 9 years. But I learned from some of the online coaches back in the day. Learned and discarded a lot of it as well.
Yeah, it must be a really interesting space because, of course, coaching coaches was born from like the scam artists who occupy that space. It must be maddening to have to share space with those folks, especially like on the internet where it can be so hard to tell the real deal apart from the scam artists. What is that like?
Actually, it's really, really tricky. The way that my business came about, I'd experienced burnout myself. I was a qualified lawyer. I'd experienced a bereavement quite recently. At that point, I was working 60 to 90-hour weeks.
Oh my
pretty much
God.
the standard. hmm For a long time. I had second and third jobs on top of being a lawyer because it didn't actually pay that well. It doesn't in the UK. Certainly when you're not qualified yet. So I was quite vulnerable myself at the time, and I realized I couldn't keep working these long hours. It meant even if I wasn't doing overtime, I was doing 12 hours between the work and the commute every day, 5 days a week, plus doing all the things on top. So I actually came into this space initially because I was looking for something. I was burnt out. I was looking how to recover from that. Nobody was talking about burnout in my world in 2014. And I was kind of looking at what you can do and how you can recover, and then thinking about what I was going to do with my career. And I actually started out because I followed somebody who taught you to find your freedom business idea. It went from there, basically.
And did you through this coach or through this person?
This is the one thing where I have to give credit. A broken clock is right twice a day, right? This person, genuinely 90% of what I learned from them, I've either discarded or it wasn't helpful. But there was some, technical stuff around how to buy website domain names and how to set it up. But the one question that really stuck with me was, what is the thing that you're getting drinks with friends, somebody puts a second drink in your hand, you open your mouth and they all go, oh God, here she goes. What's the thing that you can't shut up about? And that was where my business started because back in 2014, it was, well, 2015, it was, why do so many brilliant people come into this career of law and not stay? Why have they gone within 10 years? And that's where my business started. So, to give credit, that bit was helpful, but a lot of it was not great. And certainly I was not earning I was not bringing in the 10K months I was told I would be within 6 months of
Right
working
out
with
of
her.
the gate, making $10,000 months, $100,000 months. Yeah.
Leah, can you, so I feel like burnout is definitely a hot topic in sort of the zeitgeist, I would say right now. But can you, as a, burnout specialist in your coaching, define it for our audience? What is burnout
absolutely.
to you?
So burnout, first of all, it's not it's not in the ICD, well, it's in the ICD-11. It's not going to be something that you see a doctor in A&E for, but it's a reason why a lot of people will interact with medical professionals. It's termed as an occupational phenomenon, which is incredibly difficult for me to say without singing the Muppet song in the background. But it's something that occurs as a result of chronic workplace stress that's not been successfully managed, which for a lot of people, it's a lot of work, right? Chronic, so it's got to have continued for a significant period of time. That doesn't necessarily mean decades, but it does have to have been more than the odd day. Workplace, they define it as workplace. I would personally be a little bit more broad than that because I used to work with people who were carers for people with traumatic brain injuries. Does it make any sense that somebody who's employed to do that role can experience burnout, but if you're doing it because it's a family member, you can't? No. So chronic workplace stress that's not successfully managed. And what that means is it's not resolved, it's not alleviating. You need to have peaks and troughs. And if there isn't that downtime, then it's not happening. Burnout's got three key dimensions. Exhaustion and depletion. I don't need to explain that to anybody. I know Rachel's a mum, so I don't need to explain that at all. Negativity, cynicism, and increased mental distance from your work is the second dimension, and reduced professional efficacy. And the way that I sum that up is you've been stressed at work for a long time and it's not being resolved. You're waking up every day feeling tired, wondering why you're doing this, and it's getting tougher to do every day. That's what burnout is.
Yeah. It sounds like it's when you can't hustle any harder than this.
Look at this picture. Look how tired I am.
Leah, thank you so much for that. I've never heard it explained like so concisely and specifically. Thank you so much.
We talked before, Leah.
It's one of the things.
Sorry, a lot about.
Sorry.
This is how it goes. Zoom. But yeah, it explained very well and clearly and intelligently. Yeah. Everyone's just like, it's a good keyword. It's a good hashtag, right? It's this good sort of like burnout. But it feels like this thing that people get to a place where suddenly they realize, oh no, I'm exhausted. Are you seeing people, Leah, before they hit that point? Before they get to the point where they're like, I'm exhausted? Do people have the foresight to call you before that happens?
I would love if people were to call me when they go, right, I've had a really challenging day. Bring it back to the Instagram reel for a moment. The amount of times that you see burnout and people are like, I just had a day lying in the pool and I've recovered from burnout. And I'm like, that's not burnout then. That's not how that works. But on the flip side of it, for most of us, particularly most of us who are professionals or who have been working in a job for a long time, have been trying to work their way up, exhaustion is part of the role, right? You're used to getting tired. You're used to having to do more with less. In the UK, we talk about our cost of living crisis, which means everything's costing more and we're not earning as much. And so you have to do more with less. So actually, I think for a lot of people, exhaustion just becomes so ingrained in the fabric of what we do. They don't think of it as something to look at, to do differently. What is really key for me is it's when you start having that negativity and that cynicism, it's when you start finding that every day it's more and more of a struggle and you're getting less and less done or not feeling on top of it. So there's this back and forth between, is this a reasonable workload that I'm not being given the tools to do effectively? Or is this a workload that is reasonable and I've got the tools, but I can't use them effectively? And there's two sides to that. And I get a lot of people who say to me, I don't understand why I'm struggling because I used to be able to do this fine. And I'm like, yeah, I also used to be able to drink a lot of alcohol and not suffer for days afterwards. We get older, we can't do the same things. Often we've been doing too much for too long, and those resources are depleted. So I get a lot of people who come to me when they say, I don't know I can keep doing this, or I want to be able to keep doing this, but the way it is right now, there's no way. And then I also get people come to me when they go, right, yeah, I've been signed off sick. What do we do now? But if you're waiting to be signed off sick, if you're waiting to collapse, you're waiting far too long because burnout is something you live, not something that just happens and you fall off a cliff.
And it seems like business owners are probably in sort of unique situations when it comes to burnout. You know, they're their own boss. So, as a business owner yourself, can you speak a little bit to that, how burnout might look a little bit different for business owners or how you're avoiding it? Because like you said, you've been doing this for 9 years. So you're sort of the only one, you know, responsible for your mental health and to make sure that you don't burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't burn out, and it's mainly due to pure spite at this point. I
Pure
refuse to
spite.
burn out. There are far too many people who would find it hilarious if I did burn out, so that helps me. But genuinely, business owners, it is different because you have more control over resources. That doesn't necessarily mean you've got a ton of money or, you know, that you can take every Friday off and go to the spa, lovely as I'm sure that would be. But it does mean that you have the opportunity to consider resources, to consider the work you're taking on, to consider whether you need to hire someone to help. Do we need a different system? Do we need this? And so that time period between realizing something needs to change and making the change can often be shorter, and therefore it can be more effective for business owners. How many times have you worked at a company where you're like, we need a proper filing system, or I need a decent laptop that doesn't sound like it's going to take off every time I use it? And they're like, next year in the budget. And you're like, okay, and carry on, right? The bigger the organization, sometimes the more difficult it can be. Similarly, though, the bigger the organization, the more resources they can throw at things, the more likely they are to have private medical insurance, which is a bit more of a thing over here. And being able to pay for coaches and stuff like that. So as business owners, it's easier and it's more difficult because you're also the only one that's running it, the only one who's able to do it. You have to be able to take care of yourself. And if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, is your business going to exist? If the answer is no, then we need to take care of you. That's tricky.
That is a thing I think about, which is like having things in place, right? In case, even when I'm like sick or something, that like there are pieces that Natalie can pick up, or my mom, who is here in the studio but works for Dementia by Day, can help with. Yeah, there is a loneliness factor, I feel like, to running your own business that a lot of people don't talk about. And you know, you see so much the flip side, and this is where I think Leah and I really connected on the making fun of the coaching coaches to coach people. This idea of like every day is a spa day. Every day is work for 2 hours and then lay by the pool because you're your own boss and you can do whatever you want and you have all this time and you know, and it's like, it's kind of the opposite of that. You know, you have the time that you give yourself. But you gotta hustle, especially in the beginning. You gotta set things up and you gotta set yourself up for success because nobody else is gonna do that for you. I don't, you know, this whole like, here I am just relaxing by the pool. It's like, how's your business? What is your business doing? Like, how is it running if you're by the pool all the time? What are you
Yeah.
doing if you're
Well,
constantly out shopping? How is your business moving forward.
And there's also those people who are like, here I am by the pool, I'm relaxing, here's my spa day. If you're recording that and putting it on social media, you're working.
Right. You're making
So
content.
Yeah, you're making content, you're doing things. So you might be selling this idea that it's all maxing and relaxing, but is it? If you're having to take 20 different selfies to try and find the lighting by the pool, if you're sending stuff to your assistant for them to edit it, have you switched off from work? Remember that burnout definition, chronic workplace stress that's not successfully managed. When does it stop?
Certainly, it's not, people put on this like Instagram filter in such a bizarre way with the self-employment of just, it is all maxing and relaxing. But ironically, they're working while showing you how they're relaxing because they're making the content to, even if they're giving it to an assistant or whatever, but they're making that content. They're doing a thing for their work. So a lot of times, even the idea of like, let me go, Leah and I talked a little bit about this in a call before the podcast, the idea of income claim-based marketing of like, look how much money I'm making and look at all the things I can buy. But people will show themselves shopping or show themselves on a vacation. So it's like, okay, you're on the vacation, but you're still filming yourself on the vacation to show people how you're on a vacation because you make so much money. Look at me. You can do this too. You too can be on a vacation filming yourself being on a vacation.
Oh my goodness.
You too can take a very expensive vacation.
Yeah, I feel like, so there's already this problem in social media at large, right? Just people are posting their quote unquote best selves. But I think then when you're a business owner trying to project that, it's like there's another layer of intensity where now you've positioned yourself as like the aspirational thing that you need to be. And I'm not really sure where it comes from. I guess from that initial like base level of like being your best self on social media. Well, then by that logic, if you're promoting your business on social media, you're not allowed to show that you're struggling or show how much hard work you're actually doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Why else? Why else would they be doing this?
Well, you have to constantly show improvement too.
Right.
Or you have to do this thing where you say, well, back 4 years ago, you thought I was doing well, but I wasn't. Because now I'm doing well. But at that point, I wasn't. But these are people, like I'm thinking of one woman in particular that I've followed, known for a few years, and she'll post that stuff and say, well, back then, I wasn't doing well. And it's like, well, then at that point, I was taking classes from you. At that point, I was paying you, and you were telling me how well you were doing.
Yeah, like they're discrediting their past self,
Right.
basically.
But it's like, are you lying now? Or were you lying then?
Right.
Or both?
But wait, what is this income-based marketing thing? It's literally just saying, look how much money I'm making. You should trust me as a business owner?
More or less.
So income-based marketing, you'll often see it in the coaches to coach space, because what they're doing is trying to demonstrate that they've done a thing, therefore you can have a thing. And so when you see this happening, it is often that they are demonstrating the validity of what they've done and that they are the proof of concept. Like you said earlier, it's that very aspirational stuff that they can show they've done it, therefore you can too. And income-based marketing can be really overt. It can be, do you want 5K months? Do you want 10K months? Do you want a 7-figure year? Or it can be a lot more subtle than that. How many times have you seen the bro marketers casually standing in front of their Lamborghini before they do a video? Or finding out that somebody has hired a Airbnb house so that they could do all this stuff of them casually sitting on the kitchen counter and swinging their legs, because they're not telling you, work with me and you'll earn this, but they're demonstrating all of the things that they have supposedly gotten through their work so that you want that too. So it can be over or it can be quite discreet. Um, but essentially what they're saying is work with me and you can have what I have.
I didn't even think about, yeah, that discreet part of it because you do see that a lot as well. I've seen many people post like, look at my new purse, look at this. But even more often than that, it is uh, in the background.
And the focus isn't on what they do. It's on what they have
Yes.
because of what they supposedly do.
But the irony to me is these coaching coaches to coach only make money when people come to them so they can make money. They don't do really any specific thing. They're just like, let me show you how to show people how to do things so that you can also have these nice things that I have.
Can do. They can also really sell something that seems very tangible. One of the first coaches I worked with, it was you're going to find your freedom business idea and you're going to go all the way through to running your business and having your first clients. And if you looked on paper of what she gave me, it was really tangible stuff about setting up a website and figuring out how you're going to market. But is there any guarantee that it works? Because I've done it. Does that mean that you can do it too? Do you have the same privilege as me? Do you have the same background as me? Do you have the same education, the same experience, the same access to resources as I've got? Or am I just telling you, well, I'm going to give you all these things and the kind of in the small print, but not actually in the small print because no one, well, there is always disclaimers in the small print, but no one's going to say this as overtly as I'm going to say it. Well, if you can't do it with everything I've given you, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And that's the kicker for me because there is a difference between going into coaching or counseling or training, going, I'm going to give you a toolkit or we're going to talk about where we can be, but there are no guarantees, versus, but look what I've got. Why haven't you got this too?
That is a big reason why I never moved into actual coaching, right? Because people will come to me. I've had many, friends, acquaintances, and beyond come to me and say, I want to do what you do. How do I become a dementia consultant? How do I own my own business? And I'm like, I don't freaking know, because I have a master's in gerontology. I have 3 books with Johns Hopkins. I have a great sales background. I'm a really strong salesperson. Because I used to sell cars. I sold cars when I was in graduate school. Yeah. And I was damn good at it too. So that's the thing. Like, I have a mix of a very specific skill set and a specific background that has given me the ability to do this. That's different for every single person. So me being like, follow these exact steps would be total bullshit, because you can't follow those exact steps because you're not me.
There's like a specific alchemy to each business owner.
100%.
You have your own thing that you're an expert on, which is like, it just brings us back to what we often talk about, is that you can't just have a business about having a business.
but people do. That's the stupid thing.
People who have businesses about having businesses, what they are actually selling, but they don't want to say it, is they're selling marketing. They're selling positioning. They are selling an idea. They are sometimes selling the nuts and bolts of how to do it. But most often coaching coaches is either teaching people a coaching modality, and we're about to open a whole can of worms because coaching is not what most people think it is. But often what they're doing is actually just teaching people how to market in the same way that they marketed, or how to think the way that they thought. And again, we can connect those dots, but that doesn't mean you and I, Rachel and I might have exactly the same thought, but we might go in different directions with it. We probably will. It doesn't mean you're going to get there.
Leah, as a coach yourself, how do you market yourself? How do you show your audience like, hey, I am legit?
Well, what I do is I go to the pool every week and I make sure that I take videos of myself and then I send them to
I'm in.
Don't do that.
I'm like, she looks relaxed.
I've just come off of a client call as well. So for me, the first thing is that I'm clear about what a coach is. As a coach, I am working with individuals to explore their systems, their approaches, their thinking, and to use specific tools and resources, but mainly to just hold this facilitative, supportive, unconditionally positive space for them. Not in a, "Oh, everything's amazing," but in a, "I support you, I'm here with you, let's work it out" space. I'm never going to say, "Work with me and you will never experience stress again," because I work with people who love stress. That would never work. I'm not going to say, "Work with me and you're going to earn 10 times more." Do I have clients who have raised their rates or gotten pay rises after working with me? Yeah. Is that the point of it? No. And so for me as a coach, what I'm doing is first of all being really clear about what coaching is. And second of all, I'm being really clear that we're working with a set of circumstances. We're working with certain people to find their outcome, to find their way forward. And that is going to look different for every single one of my clients. And I've been doing this for, like I said, coming up to 9 years now. I've done something like 1,500 hours of one-to-one coaching. I've worked with more than 350 people, last count. I can't remember how many it is now. Every single one of them has a different outcome. Every single one of them has a different story. And that's the point. It's not about getting to a place, it's about getting to where they want to be.
And both you and Rachel are really self-aware of what your brand is and what your outcomes are. Like, you work with me, and this is actually what you get out of working with me. It's not like some nebulous
If they put in the
thing.
work, though, too, if the client decides that they want to get good things out of it, because I think the worst client I've ever had, we work with senior living companies. We had a client, this is before you were even working with Dementia by ACE, this is a few years ago, but the client was a large company, but they just didn't do any of the homework, right? So like the only person who was remotely invested was the CEO, and even he moved incredibly slowly. So when he was no longer there, the deal completely fell apart because the client just would, I felt bad. I had a project manager, Sultana, who's still a friend of ours. She said, "Well, are they still paying you?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "But, I feel very anxious getting paid by them because they're not getting the outcome that they need, because they're not doing their half of the work. So I'm delivering absolutely everything I can, but they're not going to get a good outcome because they aren't doing it."
And you're also a super clear communicator. And all of that is the key difference between you and somebody like Leah was saying, who's just going to blame you because, like, if my system doesn't work for you, it's because you didn't work hard enough. It's like, it's kind of a subtle difference when you're talking about it, but like when you're living it, it's really, two different things.
Well, this is where like the multi-level marketing, like the pyramid scheme and the coaching coaches kind of converge, because it's like, this is your fault. Like, if you're not making $100,000 a month, it's because you are a big dummy. You're the one, you haven't set yourself up for success because I'm doing everything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly that. Follow my foolproof system. All you need to do is these 5 scripts for 2 hours a day, message 20 people, and it'll all be sorted. No, it won't. If they've already bought the product, if they don't want the product, if they're in the wrong country, it won't work. And that's the thing around this very homogenous view of, I think a lot of people in this situation who are delivering this stuff, who are saying, you can be just like me, either they know that people can't, and they're just preying on the hopes of other people, or they genuinely can't, they don't have that kind of empathy, that ability to see other people's situations, to know that some people are genuinely just not going to be able to do it. Either way, it worries me.
I do often wonder which one of those it is. And I feel like a lot of people fall somewhere in the middle where they sort of put on the blinders and they just go, well, I've been able to do this so other people can too. And they aren't looking at their background, the privilege from which they came, or any number of, factors that have made them successful. Luck being one of them. Slash, they're running a con. I think there's a degree of like, you're straight up running a con right now if you are so delusional that you've convinced yourself. I think there's a lot of convincing themselves. They convince themselves, I can sell this because I've done it once, and therefore you can too. So I think it's a mix of like delusion, running a con, and just like a lack of self-awareness.
Yeah, it becomes a bubble. It really becomes a bubble, and you get so many people saying the same things and repeating the same messages. It really does feel like a cult at times. Back in the day, you would see people posting, and I've got ADHD, right? So I've got these pattern spotting abilities. I would be able to tell who was working with who and who was paying who and when they'd worked with them. And it was like this family tree. It all comes down from a few people. You could see who'd worked with who and by what they were saying, by were they posting on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or the style of what they were doing. You look at people's headlines on LinkedIn and you can see who they've worked with because they've used a format, they've used a template. And you see it over and over again that if people keep saying it, well, it must be true. Well, actually, is it the right people saying it? Are we just hearing the same people repeat the same things over and over again and assuming it must be true because we're hearing it so often? And in these spaces, particularly in the online coaching space a few years ago, it was just the same messages over and over again. Prosperity gospel, 6-figure months, 7-figure months. I can do it. You can too. I struggled so much. Let me show you how I'm having this amazing life now. That continuum over and over again. And I've had the same as Rachael did earlier, sitting there looking at a coach's post going, this coach is saying how awful her life was a few years ago, and it was so terrible, and this happened, and that happened, and she was working with her clients, and she was exhausted. And I was like, I was that client.
Yeah,
I was that client. Can I have my money back now? Because apparently it was so awful for you, but you were telling me it was perfect, and you'd manifested your dream flat overlooking the Mediterranean. So, what gives? It just gets repeated. And that cognitive dissonance, that ability to see the difference between, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm saying, and those two things might not match up, is often, or not just lacking, we're told not to feel it. Because, to manifest it, you have to speak it into reality. So you might not feel it yet, but say it and it will happen. And so it encourages people to say things that are pure nonsense because they want them to be true.
Cognitive dissonance.
That was
That's
damning,
the
wasn't it?
phrase,
Mhm.
that I was looking for. And that is what we see a lot of is, if I just, but what essentially they're saying is a straight up lie. Like, I made we talked about this in a previous episode. I made $100,000 this month. No, you didn't. You have $100,000 of promised, maybe, possibly, money that people have told you they're going to pay you over the course of, 6-12 months. That's not $100,000 month. That's I don't know, maybe a $5,000 or $10,000 month, but that's not $100,000.
A lot of people in this space don't know the difference between sales and cash received. A lot of people in the space don't know the difference between turnover and profit. And so these, have your 10K months. Well, if I've sold 10 grand's worth of £10,000, sorry, of stuff, but it's going to be paid over 10 years, it's not a 10K month. But not nobody, but a lot of people in this space do not have the experience of running a business. They don't necessarily haven't had training in running a business, haven't had tax and legal advice. So they just repeat the same things rather than actually understanding what the difference is between a 10K month that is cash received versus a 10K contracted with a 50% complaint and dropout rate. Those are two very different things.
It does make you wonder, do they not understand, or are they willfully ignorant, right? Like, I'm going to choose to not see this because it's going to jack up my income-based marketing claims. If I admit to myself that what I'm saying is nuts, can I still say it?
Because if you do that, if you admit that what you're saying might not quite be correct, or you look at the nuance of it, is the thing that you're selling still valuable enough that people will buy it? Or if you get rid of the 6-figure months, the 7-figure years, the 10K months, if you remove all of that out of the marketing, is there anything left that people want to buy?
Ooh, I think we should wrap on that.
Yes.
That is food for thought.
Seriously.
Leah, thanks for coming on our podcast so early in the days of this podcast. I think I told you about it before it was even a thing. I was like, I'm writing a book. I'm going to make a podcast. And you were like, great. And I was like, I'm going to have you on this podcast when it's a thing.
It was awesome meeting you, Leah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys too. Looking forward to seeing more of it.